Poor girl begs millionaire CEO to sleep in his doghouse. He, accustomed to luxury and power, did not expect to be moved by such a simple request. What seemed like just a charitable gesture turns into a surprising decision, and what he does next changes both of their lives forever. If this story interested you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and tell us what city you're watching us from. We'll keep going. The November rain fell mercilessly over Chicago's Gold Coast, turning the elite neighborhood into a glistening maze of puddles and shadows. A black Bentley crawled through the downpour, its wipers fighting a losing battle against the deluge. Inside, Maxwell Foster loosened his silk tie with a weary sigh. Another day, another billion-dollar deal closed. At 52, he had amassed more wealth than most small countries, built a corporate empire that spanned continents, and yet returned each night to a mansion as empty as his personal life. The car turned into the private driveway leading to his lakefront estate, a modernist monument of glass and stone that architectural magazines had featured multiple times. As the vehicle approached the imposing gate, the headlights illuminated something unusual. A small figure huddled against the stone wall. "Stop the car," Max ordered, peering through the rain-streaked window. His driver, Thomas, looked concerned. "Sir, in this weather," I said, "stop." The Bentley halted. Max grabbed an umbrella and stepped out, the wind immediately assaulting him. As he approached the wall, he realized the figure was a child, a girl, perhaps 9 or 10 years old, drenched to the bone, wearing clothes several sizes too large. "Hey there," he called out, trying to soften his naturally commanding voice. The girl looked up, revealing a face that, despite being streaked with rain and dirt, held a dignity that stopped Max in his tracks. Her eyes, large and intelligent, assessed him without fear. "Can I please sleep in your doghouse tonight?" Her voice was clear despite her shivering. "I won't make any noise. You won't even know I'm there." Something shifted in Max's chest, a recognition distant but visceral. Those eyes reminded him of himself 4 decades ago, when he'd slept in alleyways and under bridges, before a stroke of luck and relentless determination had propelled him out of poverty. "I don't have a dog," he replied, surprising himself with the gentleness in his tone. "Oh." Disappointment clouded her face, but she nodded with the resignation of someone used to hearing no. "But I have a guest room," Max heard himself say. "Several, actually." The girl looked at him skeptically. "I don't go with strangers." A smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. Her street smarts reminded him of his younger self, too. "Smart kid? How about this? My driver and housekeeper are both inside. You can meet them first, have some hot chocolate, and if you still don't feel safe, Thomas can drive you wherever you want to go. Deal?" She considered this, rain dripping from her tangled hair. "What's your name?" "Maxwell Foster. Friends call me Max. And you are?" "Lily," she replied after a moment's hesitation. "Lily Carter." Max extended his umbrella to cover her. "Well, Lily Carter, I think we both could use some dry clothes and warm food, don't you?" She stood up, revealing how truly small she was. Max resisted the urge to pick her up, sensing she needed to maintain her independence. Instead, he walked slowly beside her to the car, where Thomas waited with a confused expression. "Thomas, this is Lily. She'll be joining us tonight." The driver nodded, professional as always, though his eyes conveyed a million questions. Inside the mansion, Mrs. Reynolds, the housekeeper who had worked for Max for 15 years, took one look at the soaked child and sprang into action. "Goodness gracious, let's get you warmed up immediately, young lady." Lily stood in the marble foyer, water pooling around her worn sneakers, taking in the vaulted ceilings, crystal chandelier, and sweeping staircase. For the first time, her composure cracked, and she looked overwhelmed. "It's too much to take in at once," Max said quietly. "Focus on one thing at a time. Right now, dry clothes and food." She nodded gratefully. An hour later, wrapped in a fluffy bathrobe that swallowed her whole, hair still damp from a hot shower, Lily sat at the kitchen island. Mrs. Reynolds had prepared tomato soup and grilled cheese sandwiches, comfort food that seemed to ease the girl's tension. Max noticed how she ate, quickly, efficiently, as if the food might disappear. He recognized that too. "How old are you, Lily?" he asked casually. 10. She dunked a corner of her sandwich into the soup. "Almost 11. And where are your parents?" Her chewing slowed. My mom died when I was 6. Cancer. Dad left before I was born. I'm sorry to hear that, Max said, meaning it. Who's been taking care of you? My grandma. But Lily had a stroke hard. 3 months ago. They took her to a hospital, then a nursing home. Then they put me in Oakwood Children's Center because there was nobody else. And you ran away from Oakwood? Max asked, careful to keep judgment from his voice. Lily's eyes flashed. They treat you like a number there, all rules and schedules, and nobody actually sees you. Grandma always said being poor doesn't mean you can't have dignity. Her voice broke on the last word, and she quickly spooned more soup into her mouth. Max felt something shift inside him, a door opening to a part of himself he'd walled off decades ago. How long have you been on your own? 26 days, she answered precisely. I've been keeping count. Where have you been sleeping? She shrugged. Parks, mostly. Behind restaurants sometimes. I found a laundromat where I could stay warm on really cold nights until they closed. Max exchanged a glance with Mrs. Reynolds, whose eyes had grown misty. Well, he said decisively, tonight you'll sleep in a real bed. We can figure out the rest tomorrow. That night, after Mrs. Reynolds had settled Lily into a guest suite with fresh pajamas and a stack of books from Max's rarely used library, he sat in his office, staring out at the storm still raging over Lake Michigan. The sensible thing would be to call social services in the morning. A single businessman with no family and a 70-hour work week had no business taking in a child, and yet his phone rang, pulling him from his thoughts. The caller ID showed Eleanor Wade, his company's general counsel. Max, sorry to call so late. The Singapore team is balking at the terms of the merger. They want more board seats than we discussed. Tell them it's non-negotiable, he replied automatically, his mind still half focused on the child sleeping upstairs. I did, but they're threatening to walk. Can you join a call at 6 a.m. to smooth things over? Your charm seems to work wonders with the Lim family. Normally, this kind of crisis would consume him. Tonight, it felt distant, unimportant. Eleanor, I might need to take tomorrow morning off. Personal matter. The silence on the other end was so profound he could almost hear her shock. In 15 years, Maxwell Foster had never taken personal time. Is everything all right? She finally asked. Yes, just some unexpected circumstances. Have Morgan step in for the call. After hanging up, Max wandered through his silent mansion. He paused outside the guest room where Lily slept, the door left slightly ajar at her request. Peering in, he saw her small form curled tightly under the covers, one hand clutching the edge of the blanket, as if afraid someone might take it away. Something protective and fierce surged through him, an emotion so foreign he barely recognized it. The last time he'd felt anything similar was decades ago, when he'd vowed to never be vulnerable or dependent again. Max returned to his office and began to search online for information about child services, foster care systems, and the legal rights of abandoned children. Hours passed as he read story after heartbreaking story of children lost in bureaucratic systems, bounced between temporary homes. By the time dawn broke over the lake, Maxwell Foster, a man who built his reputation on careful calculation and emotional detachment, had made the most impulsive decision of his adult life. He didn't just want to help Lily find a good home, he wanted to give her his. A soft knock interrupted his research. Lily stood in the doorway, drowning in borrowed pajamas, her hair a wild tangle around her face. You're up early, he said, quickly closing his laptop. I always wake up early, she replied, studying him with those disconcertingly perceptive eyes. Are you going to call the police about me? Max shook his head. No, but we do need to figure out what happens next. Are you hungry? She nodded. Good. Let's have breakfast and talk. I have a proposition for you. As they walked toward the kitchen, Lily maintained a careful distance, still wary, still uncertain. But when Max gently placed a hand on her shoulder to guide her around a corner, she didn't pull away. It was a small thing, this moment of tentative trust. But to a man who had built walls around himself for protection, it felt monumental. Outside, the storm had finally passed, leaving behind a washed-clean world glittering with possibility. Within the mansion's walls, something new and fragile had begun to take root. Something that felt surprisingly like hope. The next few days unfolded in a surreal dance of adjustment. Max had postponed his Singapore merger, sending shockwaves through Foster Enterprises, to focus on something entirely foreign to him, creating stability for a child. "You want me to stay?" Lily had asked over breakfast that first morning, her fork suspended midway to her mouth, pancake dripping syrup onto her plate. "Like, for real?" "At least until we figure things out," Max had replied, still surprising himself with the decision. "It's not safe for you on the streets, especially with winter coming." A week later, Max stood in the doorway of what had once been a sterile guest room, now transformed by Mrs. Reynolds's enthusiastic shopping. The walls remained cream-colored. They'd need proper painting later. But the bed now boasted a colorful quilt. The bookshelves held children's classics alongside science encyclopedias. Lily had mentioned loving both. And a small desk sat beneath the window overlooking the lake. "It's not much yet," he said, feeling oddly nervous as Lily explored the space. "We can change anything you don't like." Lily ran her fingers along the spines of the books, her expression unreadable. "It's more than I've ever had," she finally said. Then, with a hint of suspicion, "What do you want from me?" The question hit Max like a physical blow. What kind of world had taught this child that kindness always came with conditions? "Nothing," he said firmly. "I just want you to be safe." The skepticism didn't leave her eyes. Nobody does something for nothing. Max considered his response carefully. "When I was about your age, I lived on the streets too. Someone helped me once, let me sleep in their garage during a blizzard, gave me food, didn't call the authorities. I never forgot that." It was the first time he'd spoken about his past to anyone in years. The admission hung between them, a small bridge offered. Lily studied him with those two old eyes. "Did you ever see them again? The person who helped you?" "No," Max admitted, "but I wouldn't be here without that moment of kindness." Something shifted in her expression, not quite trust, but perhaps the seed of it. She nodded and returned to exploring her new room. The days developed a tentative rhythm. Max rearranged meetings and delegated what he could, determined to be present. Mrs. Reynolds, childless herself, but with a natural maternal instinct, became an unexpected ally, teaching Lily to bake cookies and sew buttons. Thomas, the driver, revealed a talent for math when he helped her with some educational exercises Max had ordered. But adaptation wasn't seamless. The first time the doorbell rang, a delivery Max had arranged, Lily disappeared. After 15 minutes of frantic searching, Mrs. Reynolds found her wedged beneath a desk in the library, knees pulled to her chest. "Loud noises startle her," Mrs. Reynolds explained later, after Lily had calmed down. "And she's been hiding food in her room, found a stash of apples and dinner rolls under her bed this morning." Max nodded, making mental notes. "What else?" "She eats too quickly, like she's afraid someone will take her plate, and she watches all the exits in a room, always planning escape routes, that one." These observations pierced Max's heart, but didn't surprise him. He remembered similar behaviors from his own childhood, instincts that had kept him alive but had taken years to unlearn. On the fourth night, Max was awakened by muffled sounds. Following them, he found Lily in the kitchen, attempting to clean spilled milk while quietly crying. "I'm sorry," she whispered, frantically wiping the counter. "I was thirsty. I'll clean it up." "Hey, it's okay," Max said gently, taking the cloth from her trembling hands. "It's just milk." "But I made a mess in your house." "Our house," Max corrected, surprising himself, "and messes happen." Her eyes widened at the word "our," but she said nothing, watching carefully as he cleaned up the spill without anger or reproach. The next morning, Max found her attempting to make breakfast, pancakes burned beyond recognition, but plated with careful pride. "I wanted to help," she explained, looking uncertain. Max took a bite and managed not to wince at the charred taste. "Delicious. Maybe tomorrow we can cook together." Her tentative smile was worth every scorched bite. Progress came in small moments. Lily began to talk more about her grandmother, a tough but loving woman who had taught her to read early and insisted she speak like someone with sense. She mentioned distant memories of her mother, more impressions than concrete recollections. The smell of lavender, a soft laugh, bedtime stories with different voices for each character. In turn, Max shared carefully selected fragments of his past. His childhood in Chicago's rougher neighborhoods, the teacher who recognized his aptitude for numbers, the scholarship that changed everything. He omitted the darkest chapters, the hunger so severe it made him dizzy, The violence he'd witnessed, the brother he'd lost touch with after their paths diverged. The most remarkable transformation, however, was in the house itself. What had once been a showcase, beautiful but sterile, featured in architectural magazines but never truly lived in, began to feel like a home. The sound of children's television programs echoed through rooms that had known only news broadcasts and financial reports. Shoes too small for Max appeared kicked off by the door. A child's laughter, initially rare but increasingly frequent, bounced off walls that had known only the murmur of business calls. "Sir," Thomas said one evening, after driving them home from a bookstore where Max had let Lily select whatever titles interested her. "I've worked for you for 12 years and I've never seen you smile this much." Max had been startled by the observation. "Have I changed that noticeably?" "For the better, sir, definitely for the better." By the end of the second week, Max had arranged for a private tutor to assess Lily's educational needs. She tested above grade level in reading and science, but needed support in mathematics. The tutor, Ms. Winters, a retired teacher with kind eyes and no-nonsense methods, seemed to connect instantly with Lily. "She's bright as a button," Ms. Winters told Max after their third session. "Hungry for knowledge, but there are gaps. Inconsistent schooling, I'd wager. And she's guarded, watches for reactions before she speaks." "She's been through a lot," Max replied. "Haven't we all?" Ms. Winters said with a knowing look that made Max wonder if she somehow saw through his carefully constructed facade. "But children are resilient, Mr. Foster. Given stability and love, they can overcome remarkable obstacles." Love. The word hung in the air, unfamiliar and intimidating. Max had built an empire on strategy and cold calculation. Love had never factored into his equations. Yet that evening, when he found Lily in the library reading to a potted plant, "Grandma said plants grow better when you talk to them," she explained without embarrassment. Something warm and unfamiliar expanded in his chest. When she looked up and genuinely smiled at him for the first time, the feeling intensified into an almost physical ache. "Want to play hide and seek?" she asked suddenly, setting her book aside. "Grandma and I used to play all the time in our apartment, even though it was tiny." Max blinked, trying to remember the last time he'd played anything. "I'm not sure I remember how." Lily rolled her eyes with the magnificent disdain only children can muster. "It's not complicated. You count, I hide, you find me. I have conference calls and—" "You're too serious," she declared, interrupting him without hesitation. "That's what Grandma would say. Life's too short to be serious all the time, Lily girl." The echo of her grandmother's wisdom, delivered in Lily's solemn imitation, broke through something in Max. He found himself nodding. "All right, one game, but this place is big. We need boundaries." Her face lit up. "Just this floor and no hiding in closets or bathrooms. That's cheating." 20 minutes later, Mrs. Reynolds came upon an unprecedented sight. Maxwell Foster, billionaire CEO, crawling on hands and knees to peek under a sofa, his tie askew and a look of determined concentration on his face. "She's good at this," he explained somewhat sheepishly. Mrs. Reynolds merely smiled and pretended she hadn't seen Lily's shoes peeking out from behind the curtains in the adjacent room. That night, Max made calls to his legal team about temporary guardianship options. Eleanor Wade, still adjusting to this new version of her boss, asked the question others at Foster Enterprises were whispering. "Max, are you sure about this? Taking in a child it's not a business decision you can pivot from if the markets change." "I'm aware," he replied, watching through the window as Lily helped Mrs. Reynolds water the garden plants on the terrace. "The board is concerned about your focus." "The board works for me, not the other way around," Max reminded her, a hint of the steel that had built his empire returning to his voice. "Now, about those guardianship papers." Later, as he tucked Lily into bed, another new ritual that both still found slightly awkward but increasingly necessary, she asked the question he'd been dreading. "How long can I stay?" Max sat on the edge of her bed, choosing his words carefully. "How long would you like to stay?" She twisted the edge of her quilt, not meeting his eyes. "Until you get tired of me, I guess. People usually do. Lily, look at me," Max said gently. When she raised her eyes, he continued, "I'm not going to get tired of you. I'd like you to stay as long as you want to. I'm looking into making it official. Temporary guardianship to start with." Hope and wariness battled in her expression. "What does that mean?" "It means no more running, no more shelters. It means This is your home now." She absorbed this, her small face serious. "What if someone comes looking for me? From Oakwood?" The question sent a chill through Max. In his focus on building this new reality, he'd pushed aside the legal complications. Lily was technically a runaway from state care. There would be records, protocols, systems that would eventually catch up to them. "If they do," he said with more confidence than he felt, "we'll handle it together, I promise." The promise felt weighty, absolute. Max had built his reputation on never making promises he couldn't keep. "Okay," Lily said finally, a whisper of trust in her voice that felt like both a gift and a tremendous responsibility. After she fell asleep, Max stood in her doorway watching the gentle rise and fall of her chest, the way one hand still clutched the edge of her blanket, even in sleep. In just 2 short weeks, this child had upended every certainty in his carefully ordered life. And strangely, he wouldn't have it any other way. The knock came on a Tuesday afternoon, exactly 3 weeks and 2 days after Lily had appeared at Max's gate. 3 sharp official raps that seemed to echo through the mansion with ominous finality. Max was on a video call in his home office, discussing quarterly projections with his executive team, when Mrs. Reynolds appeared in the doorway. Her face, usually composed, conveyed unmistakable alarm. "Mr. Foster," she said, her voice tight, "there are officials at the door. From Child Protective Services. They're asking about Lily." The room seemed to tilt momentarily. Max had known this moment might come, had even begun preparing for it legally, but not this soon. Not before he'd secured the temporary guardianship his lawyers were working on. "I need to call you back," he told the screen of confused executives before disconnecting. He found Lily in the kitchen helping Mrs. Reynolds prepare cookie dough, flour dusting her cheeks and a smile that vanished the instant she saw his expression. "Go upstairs to your room, sweetheart," Mrs. Reynolds said gently. "Mr. Foster needs to speak with some people." "Is it about me?" Lily asked, already backing toward the door, eyes darting toward escape routes, a habit that had begun to fade but now returned with full force. "Yes," Max admitted, knowing lies would only erode the fragile trust they'd built. "But I'm going to handle it. Remember what I promised? We face things together." She nodded but continued her retreat. Max recognized the look in her eyes, the resignation of a child who'd learned that adults' promises, however well-intentioned, often shattered against the hard edges of reality. In the foyer, 2 women waited. The younger one held a tablet and wore an expression of professional neutrality. The older woman, with steel-gray hair pulled into a severe bun, radiated authority and cold efficiency. "Mr. Foster, I'm Diana Hargrove, Director of the Oakwood Children's Center. This is Ms. Patel from the Department of Child Services. We're here about Lily Carter." Max extended his hand, employing the charm that had disarmed countless business adversaries. "A pleasure to meet you both. I was actually planning to contact your department this week. Won't you come into my office?" The women followed, Ms. Patel glancing around with barely concealed awe at the mansion's opulence. Director Hargrove, however, seemed impervious to the surroundings, her gaze clinical and assessing. "Mr. Foster," she began once they were seated, "we received an anonymous tip that Lily Carter, a ward of the state who ran away from our facility 29 days ago, is residing in your home. Is this correct?" Max considered lying, then discarded the idea. "Yes, she's here. She arrived during a storm, alone and frightened. I've been providing her with shelter, food, education, and security while exploring legal guardianship options." Ms. Patel tapped notes into her tablet, but Director Hargrove's expression remained unmoved. "While your intentions may seem charitable, you've been harboring a runaway minor, which is a serious legal matter. Lily was placed in state care after her grandmother became incapacitated. The proper channels exist for a reason, Mr. Foster." "With all due respect," Max countered, his tone pleasant but firm, "Lily ran away from your facility because she felt unsafe and unwelcome. She was living on the streets for nearly a month before she arrived here. All the more reason she should have been returned immediately to proper authorities," Director Hargrove replied, a note of steel entering her voice. "Not kept secretly in a private residence, however luxurious, by a single man with no experience in childcare and no relation to the child." The implications stung, but Max maintained his composure. "I've provided Lily with stability, education, and care. My household staff can attest to her well-being, as can her tutor. I've consulted with pediatricians and child psychologists. I assure you, her welfare has been my sole priority." Miss Patel looked somewhat mollified, but Director Hargrove remained unmoved. "Regardless of your intentions, Mr. Foster, the law is clear. Lily Carter is a ward of the state. She must return to appropriate state-supervised care, while any guardianship application you wish to submit goes through proper channels." "She's finally feeling secure here," Max argued, abandoning some of his carefully cultivated restraint. "Uprooting her again would be traumatic. We're trained professionals, Mr. Foster. We understand childhood trauma far better than a businessman, however successful." The director's tone was dismissive. "We'll need to see the child now." Max felt cornered. "May I speak with her first, to prepare her?" Director Hargrove checked her watch. 5 minutes. Max found Lily exactly where he expected. Under her bed, the hiding spot she retreated to when frightened. Only her eyes were visible in the shadows. "They're going to take me away, aren't they?" Her voice was small but eerily calm, as if she'd been expecting this betrayal all along. Max knelt beside the bed. "They want to, yes, but I'm not giving up. This is just a setback." "You promised." The accusation in those 2 words cut deeper than any business rival's attack ever had. "I know, and I meant it, but sometimes keeping promises takes longer than we want." Max extended his hand. "I need you to be brave now. Can you do that?" After a long moment, her small hand reached out to take his. As they walked downstairs together, her fingers gripped his with almost painful intensity. In the living room, Director Hargrove's clinical gaze swept over Lily, noting her clean clothes, healthy appearance, and the defensive way she pressed against Max's side. "Hello, Lily," the director said, her tone softening marginally. "Do you remember me from Oakwood?" Lily nodded but said nothing. "You've caused quite a lot of concern, young lady. Running away is dangerous and against the rules." "I didn't like it there," Lily stated flatly. "Nobody saw me." The director's lips thinned. "We see all our children. We have procedures and protocols designed for your well-being." "I want to stay here," Lily said, her voice gaining strength. "With Max, he sees me." Ms. Patel looked between the child and the businessman, clearly noting their connection. Director Hargrove, however, remained unmoved. "I'm afraid that's not possible right now, Lily. You need to come with us while Mr. Foster applies for guardianship through proper channels, if that's truly his intention." "It is," Max interjected firmly. "My lawyers are already preparing the paperwork." "Then you have nothing to worry about," the director told Lily with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "If Mr. Foster is approved as a suitable guardian, you can return. But for now, you need to come with us." "No!" Lily's composure cracked. She wrapped her arms around Max's waist. "Please don't make me go back, please." The desperation in her voice shredded Max's heart. He knelt to her level, gently holding her shoulders. "Lily, look at me. This isn't forever. I will get you back, I promise, no matter what it takes." "You already promised," she cried, tears streaming now. "You said we'd handle it together." "And we will," Max insisted, his own voice rough with emotion. "But right now we have to follow their rules. I'll visit you, I'll call, I'll send letters, and I'll be working every minute to bring you home." Miss Patel looked increasingly uncomfortable with the scene. Even Director Hargrove's certainty seemed to waver momentarily. "Perhaps," Miss Patel suggested tentatively, "we could arrange an expedited home study considering the circumstances." Director Hargrove shot her a quelling look. "Procedures exist for a reason, Ms. Patel. No exceptions." She turned to Max. "You may visit during regular visiting hours once she's settled. Lily, please collect any essential belongings." "Everything I need is here," Lily whispered, still clinging to Max. "Then we'll be going," the director stated. Mrs. Reynolds appeared in the doorway, clutching a small backpack. "I've packed some things for her," she said, her voice unsteady. "Her favorite books, the sweater she likes, her hairbrush." Max gave her a grateful look before turning back to Lily. From his pocket, he withdrew a small stuffed bear he'd purchased just days earlier, planning to give it to her that evening. "Take this with you," he said, pressing it into her hands. "So you'll remember that you have a home waiting for you here, always." Lily clutched the bear to her chest but said nothing more, her expression shuddering, retreating behind walls that Max recognized all too well, the protective barriers of a child who'd learned that attachment leads to pain. As the social workers led her toward the door, Max followed. "I'll call my lawyers immediately. How soon can I visit her?" "After a 72-hour adjustment period," Director Hargrove replied. "It's protocol for runaways who've been in unauthorized placements." 3 days? Max was incredulous. "She'll think I've abandoned her." "Perhaps you should have considered the consequences before harboring a ward of the state, Mr. Foster." The director's tone was coldly professional. "Children need consistency and proper procedures, not impulsive charity from wealthy individuals." As they reached the door, Lily looked back once, her expression so lost that Max nearly lunged forward to grab her back. Only the knowledge that such an action would destroy any chance of legal guardianship kept him rooted in place. "I'll come for you," he called instead, "as soon as they let me, and I'll write every day until then." The sound of the car doors closing seemed thunderously final. Max stood in the doorway long after the vehicle disappeared down the driveway, a hollow feeling expanding in his chest. "Sir?" Mrs. Reynolds appeared beside him, her own eyes red-rimmed. "What can we do?" Max straightened, the businessman in him taking control even as the newly discovered parent in him howled. "Call Eleanor Wade and tell her to drop everything. I need my entire legal team mobilized. Then call Dr. Bennett. I want a child psychologist's assessment of Lily's well-being here documented immediately. Thomas should contact that reporter, who's been wanting an exclusive with me. I suddenly find myself willing to consider it, provided certain topics are covered." Mrs. Reynolds nodded, already reaching for her phone. "And," Max continued, a hardness entering his voice that had made business competitors tremble, "find out everything you can about Director Diana Hargrove and Oakwood Children's Center. Every inspection report, every complaint, every staff review." "You're going to fight," Mrs. Reynolds observed. "With everything I have," Max confirmed, already striding toward his office. "They have no idea who they're dealing with." But that night, after the flurry of calls and legal consultations, after setting in motion the machinery of his considerable resources, Max stood in the doorway of Lily's empty bedroom and felt a wave of doubt crash over him. The room seemed to echo with absence. The books untouched on shelves, the bed neatly made, the stuffed animals arranged in silent vigil. He picked up the pajamas she'd left folded on the pillow, a habit Mrs. Reynolds had taught her, and caught the faint scent of the children's shampoo she used. The hollow feeling in his chest expanded until breathing hurt. For the first time in decades, Maxwell Foster confronted a problem that money and power might not be able to solve. The realization was terrifying. He'd built an empire on the certainty of his control, on his ability to bend situations to his will through strategy and resources. But the child welfare system operated by different rules, and at its mercy was the one thing that had unexpectedly become precious to him. Max sat heavily on the edge of Lily's bed, still holding her pajamas. The great mansion around him, once a testament to his success, now felt cavernous and empty. In just 3 short weeks, a small girl with solemn eyes and surprising resilience had transformed everything, including him, particularly him. He thought of Director Hargrove's dismissive assessment, a businessman with no experience in childcare. She wasn't wrong. What did he know about raising a child? He'd spent his adult life accumulating wealth and power, not nurturing relationships. His own childhood offered no blueprint for healthy parenting, only lessons in what to avoid. Yet the thought of Lily back in an institutional setting, her spirit dimming day by day, was unbearable. He remembered her voice when she'd talked about Oakwood. Nobody saw me. Max saw her, her courage, her intelligence, her wounded heart still capable of trust. The thought that this connection might be severed permanently created an ache unlike anything he'd experienced before. "Sir?" Thomas stood in the doorway, hesitant to intrude. "Ms. Wade is on the line. She says it's important." Max nodded, setting down the pajamas with careful reverence. Whatever doubts plagued him, whatever obstacles loomed, one thing was certain. Maxwell Foster had never backed down from a fight in his life. And he wasn't about to start now, not when the stakes had never been higher. The next 72 hours were the longest of Max's life. He threw himself into battle mode, transforming his home office into a war room. Legal briefs and child welfare statutes replaced merger documents and quarterly reports. Eleanor Wade had assembled a team of the best family law attorneys in Illinois, all working around the clock. "The good news," Eleanor explained during a strategy session, is that you have resources most people in this situation don't. The bad news is that the system doesn't prioritize speed, even for billionaires. Then we make it prioritize speed, Max replied, the steel in his voice familiar to anyone who'd negotiated with him. What are our options? We've filed for emergency temporary guardianship, citing the trauma of another placement change. We've requested an expedited home study. We've submitted character references from community leaders who owe you favors. Eleanor ticked off items on her tablet. But Max, I need to be clear. This isn't a business deal. You can't simply outspend or outmaneuver the opposition. Every system has pressure points, Max insisted. Find them. While his legal team worked, Max focused on the one thing entirely within his control, letting Lily know she wasn't forgotten. Each morning, he wrote her a letter, describing the previous day at the mansion, assuring her of his efforts, including small jokes or observations he thought might make her smile. He had the letters couriered directly to Oakwood, each one accompanied by a small gift. A book, a colorful hair clip, a snow globe of Chicago's skyline. Director Hargrove called, Mrs. Reynolds reported on the second day. She says the gifts are disruptive to institutional routine and requests that you stop sending them. Max's jaw tightened. Did she say Lily received the letters? She wouldn't confirm either way. That night, Max couldn't sleep. The image of Lily waiting for messages that might never reach her haunted him. At dawn, he made a decision. Thomas, he instructed his driver, find out when the children have outdoor recreation at Oakwood. I want to see her myself. Sir, the director was clear about the 72-hour policy. I won't approach her or violate their rules. I just need to see that she's all right. That afternoon, Max sat in his parked Bentley across from Oakwood Children's Center, a large institutional building with fenced grounds that looked more prison-like than nurturing. When a group of children emerged into the playground, he scanned anxiously for Lily's familiar figure. He finally spotted her sitting alone on a bench, shoulders hunched, the stuffed bear he'd given her clutched to her chest. Even from a distance, the change in her was evident. The spark diminished, the wariness returned. She didn't join the other children in play, instead watching the gate as if waiting for someone. Waiting for him, Max realized with a pang that felt physical. As if sensing his presence, Lily suddenly looked directly at his car. Max couldn't be sure if she recognized the vehicle or him behind the tinted windows, but he raised his hand in a small wave just in case. After a moment's hesitation, she lifted her own hand in response. It wasn't much, but it was something. A connection maintained across the barriers between them. Max drove back to his office with renewed determination. The professional fallout of his divided attention was swift and significant. Foster Enterprises' stock dipped as rumors circulated about the CEO's mysterious absence from key meetings. The Singapore merger that had once seemed crucial hung in limbo. Board members began whispering about stability and leadership. The Thompson Group is threatening to pull out of the Denver project, his CFO reported, during a rare appearance Max made at corporate headquarters. They say if you're not personally involved, they question our commitment. Let them pull out, Max replied dismissively, reviewing guardianship documents between meetings. Max, that's a $340 million deal. Then they're bluffing. Call them back, offer a 2% concession and tell them I'll join by video conference next week. Similar fires erupted across his business empire. Competitors, sensing weakness, moved in on deals. Partners demanded reassurance. The board of directors requested an emergency meeting to discuss recent concerning developments. Max had built his reputation on being personally involved in every major decision, on working 18-hour days and never taking vacations. Now, for the first time, Foster Enterprises was not his sole priority. The business world noticed and worried. Your 3 o'clock is here, his assistant announced, interrupting a tense call with investors. Who's my 3 o'clock? Max asked, genuinely unable to remember. Howard Mitchell, chairman of the board. Max suppressed a groan. Howard had been a mentor once, but in recent years had become more hindrance than help, constantly fretting about shareholder value and traditional business practices. Maxwell, Howard began without preamble, settling his considerable bulk into the chair across from Max's desk. What the hell is going on? I'm hearing rumors about you adopting some street urchin, neglecting the Singapore deal, and holding up with family lawyers instead of focusing on the Thompson crisis. Max bristled at the description of Lily. I'm exploring guardianship of a child, yes. And I've delegated the Singapore negotiations to Morgan, who is perfectly capable. Howard's bushy eyebrows rose toward his receding hairline. Delegated? Since when do you delegate anything? This company was built on your personal involvement. Perhaps that was a weakness in our organizational structure, Max countered. No company should be so dependent on one individual. This isn't about organizational theory. It's about you suddenly throwing away everything you've built for some charity project. Max felt a dangerous calm settle over him, the kind that preceded his most ruthless business decisions. Lily is not a project. She's a child who needs a home, and I'm in a position to provide one. At what cost? The board is meeting tomorrow to discuss a temporary leadership transition. There's talk of asking you to take a leave of absence until this situation is resolved. They can certainly try, Max replied, his tone making it clear what he thought of such an attempt. Howard leaned forward, his expression softening slightly. Max, I've known you for 20 years. You've never shown the slightest interest in family or children. What's this really about? Midlife crisis? Guilt over all that money? There are better ways to give back. Start a foundation, fund a scholarship. Hell, build an entire orphanage if you want, but don't throw away everything for one random child. The suggestion that his connection to Lily could be reduced to a crisis or guilt sparked something dangerous in Max. Howard, I value our history, so I'm going to say this once, calmly. My personal decisions are not up for debate or committee approval. I built this company from nothing. I own controlling interest. If the board is unhappy with my leadership, they're welcome to tender their resignations. The chairman's face flushed. This isn't you talking. The Maxwell Foster I know would never jeopardize his life's work over sentimentality. Maybe you never really knew me, Max replied quietly. Or maybe I'm finally discovering parts of myself that business success couldn't reveal. After Howard stormed out, Max sat in the silence of his office, contemplating the truth in his own words. Was he changing fundamentally, or simply uncovering aspects of himself long buried beneath ambition and self-protection? He was still pondering this when Eleanor called with news. The judge has granted an exception to the waiting period. You can visit Lily tomorrow morning. The relief was so intense that Max had to grip his desk. What about the guardianship petition? Still working through channels, but this is a positive sign. The judge seems responsive to our arguments about stability and emotional connection. The next morning, Max arrived at Oakwood precisely at the appointed time, bearing another small gift, a journal with a lock and key, something private in a place where privacy was scarce. Director Hargrove met him in the lobby, her disapproval evident in every line of her posture. Mr. Foster, Lily is waiting in the visitation room. I must remind you that these sessions are supervised and limited to 30 minutes. I understand, Max replied, maintaining rigid politeness. The visitation room was cheerless. Beige walls, uncomfortable furniture, fluorescent lighting that gave everything a sickly pallor. Lily sat at a small table, her posture tense until she saw Max. Then her face transformed, hope breaking through the careful blankness. You came, she said, as if she doubted it despite his promises. Of course I did, Max replied, taking the chair across from her, painfully aware of the staff member watching from the corner. As soon as they allowed it. Did you get my letters? He asked, noticing the tightness around her eyes, the shadows beneath them that suggested sleep wasn't coming easily. Lily glanced quickly at the supervisor before shaking her head slightly. The anger that surged through Max was white hot, but he contained it, knowing an outburst would only hurt their cause. Instead, he pushed the wrapped journal across the table. I brought you something. Her eyes widened as she unwrapped it. It has a lock, she whispered, understanding immediately the value of such a thing in this environment. For your thoughts, Max explained. Private ones, special ones, anything you want to remember. Lily ran her fingers over the cover reverently, before looking up at him with an intensity that struck him to the core. Are you still trying to bring me home? Every single day, Max assured her. I have the best lawyers working on it. It's taking longer than I hoped, but we're making progress. They said I might have to go to a foster home instead, she confided, voice dropping even lower. Not back to you. Max felt his chest constrict. Who told you that? Another glance at the supervisor. Director Hargrove. She said you might look good on paper because you're rich, but the courts care about experience with children and stable family environments. The calculation in this message to a vulnerable child infuriated Max, but he kept his voice gentle. Director Hargrove doesn't make the final decision. The judge does, and I'm doing everything possible to show the judge that you belong with me. What if it doesn't work? Lily's voice cracked slightly. What if they send me somewhere else? Max reached across the table to cover her small hand with his. Then I'll keep fighting. I won't stop until you're home, Lily, no matter how long it takes. She nodded, blinking rapidly against tears. I don't like it here. The other kids are okay, but the grown-ups look through you, not at you, and everything's so scheduled. Tell me about your days, Max encouraged, wanting to understand exactly what she was experiencing. As Lily described the rigid routines, the impersonal care, the lack of individual attention among 27 children with varied needs, Max made mental notes. Every detail was potential ammunition for their case. The 30 minutes passed with excruciating speed. When the supervisor announced their time was up, Lily clutched the journal to her chest like armor. I'll be back as soon as they let me, Max promised as they stood, and I'll keep sending letters. If you don't receive them, I'll find another way to get messages to you. Lily nodded, then surprised him by darting forward to hug him fiercely. Don't forget about me, she whispered against his suit jacket. The simple plea broke something in Max. He knelt to her level, heedless of his expensive trousers against the institutional linoleum. That would be impossible, Lily. You're unforgettable. As he walked out past Director Hargrove, Max paused. I'd like to know why Lily hasn't received any of my letters. The director's expression remained impassive. All correspondence is reviewed for appropriateness before distribution. Given the unusual circumstances and pending legal matters, additional review time has been necessary. I expect every letter to be delivered to her by tomorrow, Max stated, his tone making it clear this wasn't a request. My lawyers will be inquiring about this specifically. Back in his car, Max allowed himself a moment of pure, unchecked fury, pounding the steering wheel once, hard enough to hurt. Then he pulled out his phone. Eleanor, I need you to add something to our filing. Oakwood has been withholding my letters from Lily. Deliberate emotional manipulation of a minor, and I want a formal complaint filed against Director Hargrove specifically. That might antagonize the very people evaluating your guardianship petition, Eleanor cautioned. They're already antagonized, and they're hurting her. Max's voice hardened. No more playing nice. Use every legal tool we have. That evening, the board's threatened meeting took place without Max, who sent a simple message. Any decisions made in my absence regarding my position will result in immediate legal action against each board member individually. Howard called afterward, apoplectic. You can't threaten the board this way? What's happened to you, Max? What indeed, Max wondered as he ended the call. The man who had spent decades building walls around himself, who viewed emotional attachment as weakness, who calculated every relationship for its potential value, that man was disappearing. In his place stood someone new, someone who found himself measuring success not in dollars, but in the trust of a child's eyes. The transformation carried costs. His professional reputation was taking hits. Longtime business associates whispered about instability. His company's stock value had dropped 12% in a week. And yet, for the first time in his adult life, Maxwell Foster was certain he was fighting for something that truly mattered. 2 weeks stretched into a month, and then 6 long weeks. Max established a routine around his twice-weekly visits to Lily, restructuring his entire professional life to accommodate the rigid visitation schedule at Oakwood. The letters continued daily, and after his confrontation with Director Hargrove, they began reaching Lily, albeit sometimes with sections blacked out like classified government documents. They put marker over parts they don't like, Lily explained during one visit, showing him a recent letter where entire paragraphs had been redacted. I tried holding it up to the light, but it didn't work. Max smiled despite his frustration. What do you think I wrote in those secret sections? Lily's eyes sparkled with the first genuine amusement he'd seen in weeks. Probably treasure maps or secret codes. Or maybe you called Director Hargrove a dragon lady. I would never, Max replied with exaggerated innocence that made Lily giggle. These moments of connection sustained them both through the grinding machinery of the legal system. Home studies, psychological evaluations, background checks, financial disclosures. Each step seemed designed to test Max's patience and resolve. The process that might have taken years for an ordinary applicant was expedited by his resources, but still moved with agonizing slowness. Meanwhile, life at Foster Enterprises reached a crisis point. The board had backed down from their threat of forced leave, but Max's decreased presence was taking a toll. The Thompson deal collapsed entirely. The Singapore merger stalled. Competitors circled like sharks scenting blood. "You need to make a choice, Max," Eleanor told him bluntly after a particularly disastrous quarterly report. "The company needs you. If you're serious about this guardianship, you might have to step back from day-to-day operations more formally." The suggestion would have been unthinkable months earlier. Now Max found himself considering it without panic. "Draw up the paperwork for a temporary leadership transition. Morgan can take operational control for 6 months, with me retaining final say on major decisions." Eleanor stared at him. "You're serious?" "The company survived before me. It can survive without my constant attention." Max turned back to the guardianship documents on his desk. "This can't wait. She can't wait." The change in leadership was announced the following Monday. Business media erupted with speculation. Foster Enterprises stock dropped another 8% before stabilizing. Industry insiders whispered about health problems, mental breakdowns, or secret scandals. Max ignored it all, focusing instead on preparing for the upcoming custody hearing. The date had finally been set, exactly 2 months and 4 days after Lily had been taken from his home. The night before the hearing, Max found himself unable to sleep. He wandered through the silent mansion, pausing in Lily's room. Mrs. Reynolds had maintained it perfectly, ready for the child's return. New books waited on shelves. Art supplies sat arranged on the desk. A handmade quilt, a project the housekeeper had undertaken with surprising enthusiasm, lay folded at the foot of the bed. So much hope contained in one room. So much potential for disappointment. Max sat on the edge of the bed, confronting his deepest fear. What if, after all this, he failed her? What if the judge decided a wealthy bachelor with no parenting experience wasn't suitable guardian material? What if Lily ended up in the foster system, bounced between temporary homes, the brightness in her dimming with each transition? The thought was unbearable. His phone chimed with a text, unusual at this late hour. It was from Eleanor. "Just received notice. Hargrove filed a last-minute character statement against your petition. Claims your recent erratic business behavior demonstrates instability. We'll counter tomorrow, but be prepared." Max set the phone down, unsurprised. The director had made her opposition clear from the beginning. She viewed him not as a potential parent, but as a wealthy dilettante playing at charity. Or worse, a suspicious character with questionable motives. "She's not entirely wrong," Max murmured to the empty room. His behavior had been erratic by his previous standards. He'd threatened his board, neglected deals, upended priorities. By every metric he'd once valued, he was failing. Yet by the metrics that suddenly mattered most, Lily's trust, her well-being, her future, he was finally succeeding at something genuinely important. The realization settled something within him. Whatever happened tomorrow, Max knew with absolute certainty that fighting for Lily was the right choice. Perhaps the first truly selfless choice he'd made in his adult life. With that thought, he finally found sleep. The courthouse loomed cold and imposing the next morning. Max arrived early, impeccably dressed in his most conservative suit, joined by Eleanor and 2 family law specialists. The attorneys talked strategy, while Max sat silent, rehearsing what he would say when given the chance to address the court. Director Hargrove arrived with her own legal team, nodding stiffly in Max's direction, before taking a seat across the aisle. The social worker, Ms. Patel, slipped in moments later, looking uncomfortable caught between the opposing sides. "All rise," the bailiff called, as Judge Rosemary Martinez entered. A stern-looking woman in her 60s with shrewd eyes and a reputation for no-nonsense efficiency. The proceedings began with formal introductions and procedural matters. Max tried to focus, but found his attention continually drawn to the door. Where was Lily? Wouldn't she be part of this hearing? As if reading his thoughts, Eleanor leaned over. "They'll bring her in when the judge is ready to hear from her. Standard procedure to minimize a child's time in court." The attorneys presented their arguments. Foster's legal team emphasized the strong bond formed between Max and Lily, the stable home environment, the educational opportunities, the child's expressed wish to return to his care. They presented expert testimony from psychologists about the damage of multiple transitions and the importance of honoring existing attachments. The state's attorneys countered with concerns about Max's lack of parenting experience, his demanding career, and the unorthodox way the relationship began. Director Hargrove's statement about his erratic business decisions was entered into evidence, along with speculation about his psychological stability. Your Honor, Eleanor argued, Mr. Foster's decision to prioritize a child's welfare over temporary business interests demonstrates exactly the kind of commitment that makes for excellent guardianship. Many parents must balance career and family. Mr. Foster has shown he's willing to put family first when necessary. The arguments continued. Legal points countered with other legal points, precedents cited and distinguished, the fate of a child reduced to procedural technicalities. Max felt increasingly frustrated by the clinical distance of it all. Finally, Judge Martinez held up her hand. I've heard enough from the attorneys. I'd like to speak with the child now. She looked directly at Max for the first time. And afterward, I'd like to hear from Mr. Foster himself, not just his legal representatives. A side door opened and Lily entered, escorted by a court officer. She wore a simple blue dress, new, Max noted, not something he recognized, and her hair had been neatly braided. She looked small and solemn, but her eyes lit up when she saw Max. He offered an encouraging smile as she was led to the witness stand. Judge Martinez spoke gently to Lily, explaining that she just wanted to ask a few questions to help make her decision. You're not in trouble and there are no wrong answers, she assured the child. I just want to understand how you feel. Lily nodded, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. Lily, can you tell me about living with Mr. Foster? The judge asked. The girl's answer came without hesitation. It was the first place that felt like home since Grandma got sick. He gave me my own room and books and a tutor, but it wasn't just the stuff. He listened to me. He played hide and seek even though he said he was too old for games. He tried to eat my pancakes when they were all burned and pretended they tasted good. A soft ripple of laughter moved through the courtroom. Max felt a lump form in his throat. What about before you lived with Mr. Foster? The judge continued. Can you tell me about that time? Lily's posture stiffened slightly. After Grandma went to the hospital, I was at Oakwood. It was unorganized, but nobody had time to really see you. Then I ran away and I was on the streets. That was scary, but sometimes scary freedom feels better than safe invisible. Judge Martinez nodded thoughtfully. That's a very grown-up observation, Lily. Now what would you like to happen? Where would you like to live? With Max, Lily answered without hesitation. In our house. The simple possessive pronoun, our, landed like a physical weight in Max's chest. Why? The judge pressed. What makes living with Mr. Foster different from other places you could go? Lily considered this carefully. Before I met him, I thought being safe meant having food and a roof. But real safe is when someone sees who you really are and wants you anyway. She glanced at Max. He sees me, and I see him too. Not just the rich part or the business part. The part that was lonely, like me. The eloquence of this child never ceased to amaze Max. She had articulated something he himself hadn't fully recognized until that moment. That their connection wasn't just about what he could give her, but about mutual recognition of a shared wound. After a few more questions, the judge thanked Lily. You've been very helpful. You can wait outside with Ms. Patel now while I speak with the adults. As Lily was escorted out, she paused briefly beside Max, reaching out to squeeze his hand. The simple gesture of reassurance, her comforting him, nearly undid his carefully maintained composure. Mr. Foster, Judge Martinez said once Lily had left, I'd like to hear from you directly. Why do you want guardianship of this child? Max stood, straightening his tie as he approached the front of the courtroom. He had prepared remarks, carefully crafted with his legal team, but as he faced the judge, those words fell away. Your Honor, 6 months ago, I would have told you my life was complete. I had everything society tells us matters: wealth, power, success. But the truth is I was hollow inside. I'd built an empire, but no home. He paused, gathering thoughts that felt raw and unfamiliar to express aloud. When Lily appeared at my gate that night, something shifted. It wasn't pity or charity that made me take her in. It was recognition, I saw in her the same desperate dignity I once had, the determination to maintain humanity despite circumstances. But she has something I lost somewhere along the way. An openness, a capacity for joy despite pain. Max took a breath, aware that the courtroom had gone very still. I'm not perfect. I don't have parenting experience. My career has been my identity for decades, but I know what it's like to be alone in the world, to feel invisible, and I know what it's like to finally be seen by someone who cares. He gestured toward the door where Lily had exited. She thinks I saved her that night, but the truth is, she saved me. She reminded me what matters. She made my house a home. She made me want to be better than I am. Director Hargrove shifted in her seat, clearly uncomfortable with the emotional turn of the proceedings. Max pressed on. I can provide Lily with education, opportunities, material comfort, yes. But more importantly, I can give her stability, acceptance, and love. Not the kind of love that's easy or convenient, but the kind that shows up, that fights, that puts someone else's needs first. He looked directly at the judge. I've restructured my entire life to make room for her. I'll continue to do whatever it takes to be the guardian, the father she deserves. Judge Martinez studied him for a long moment. Your companies have lost considerable value since you began this guardianship pursuit. Does that concern you? Stock prices recover, Your Honor. Childhoods don't. Companies can be rebuilt. Trust, once broken, is much harder to restore. The judge nodded, making a note. Director Hargrove suggests your recent behavior indicates instability. How do you respond? I would suggest it indicates exactly the opposite. For the first time, I'm making decisions based on what truly matters, not just what profits. If prioritizing a child's welfare over quarterly earnings is unstable, then perhaps our definition of stability needs reconsideration. A ghost of a smile touched the judge's lips. Well said, Mr. Foster. She turned to Director Hargrove. Director, would you like to make a final statement? The director rose, her posture rigid with conviction. Your Honor, while Mr. Foster's sincerity is not in question, good intentions don't equate to good parenting. The child welfare system exists to ensure proper placements through established protocols. Mr. Foster circumvented those protocols from the beginning by harboring a runaway. His recent professional upheaval demonstrates impulsivity, not stability. Lily deserves a traditional family environment with experienced foster parents, not a single businessman's well-intentioned experiment. The words stung, but Max kept his expression neutral. The director wasn't being deliberately cruel. She genuinely believed she was advocating for Lily's best interests as she understood them. Judge Martinez spent several minutes reviewing her notes before looking up. This court takes seriously its obligation to determine the best interests of the child. In this case, we have an unusual situation. A man of considerable means, but no parenting experience, seeking guardianship of a child he met under irregular circumstances. She removed her glasses. However, the bond between Mr. Foster and Lily Carter is evident and significant. The child's expressed preference is clear. The home study reports are favorable. The psychological evaluations indicate a healthy attachment that would be traumatic to sever. Max hardly dared breathe. Director Hargrove raises valid procedural concerns, but this court must focus on the welfare of this specific child, not institutional procedures. Therefore, I am granting Maxwell Foster's petition for legal guardianship of Lily Carter, with quarterly check-ins from family services for the first year. The relief that washed over Max was so intense, he had to grip the table to steady himself. Eleanor squeezed his arm in congratulation. Mr. Foster, the judge continued, this court is entrusting you with a profound responsibility. I expect you to continue putting Lily's needs first, as you've demonstrated these past months. I will, Your Honor. Thank you. Director Hargrove, Judge Martinez added, your dedication to protocol is noted, but I encourage more flexibility in recognizing that family connections come in many forms. Sometimes the best family for a child is the one that forms through circumstance and choice, not traditional structures. As the court adjourned, Max stood frozen for a moment, processing the reality. They'd won. Lily was coming home. He found her waiting in the hallway with Ms. Patel, her expression anxious until she saw his face. No words were necessary. She launched herself into his arms, and he lifted her effortlessly, holding her close as she wrapped her arms around his neck. We did it, he whispered. You're coming home, for real? Forever? The hope in her voice was cautious, as if she still feared disappointment. For real, forever. Max set her down gently, keeping one hand on her shoulder. Or at least until you go to college, and even then you'll still have a home with me. As they walked out of the courthouse together, Max felt a curious sense of completion. The battle for guardianship was won, but he understood with perfect clarity that the greater journey of becoming the parent Lily needed, of healing their shared wounds, of building a true family, was just beginning. And for the first time in his life, Maxwell Foster found himself looking forward to a future he couldn't completely control or predict. Homecoming day dawned bright and clear, a perfect Chicago spring morning. Max had awakened before sunrise, too anxious and excited to sleep. By the time he arrived at Oakwood to collect Lily, the entire household was in celebration mode. Mrs. Reynolds had prepared Lily's favorite foods. Thomas had tied balloons to the mailbox. Even Eleanor had sent a stack of children's books as a welcome home gift. Ready to go? Max asked, as Lily emerged from the building, clutching a small duffel bag and the stuffed bear he'd given her. She nodded, her smile radiant but her eyes darting nervously toward Director Hargrove, who stood watching from the doorway with an unreadable expression. Max knelt to Lily's level. It's okay. The judge made her decision. No one can change that now. Promise? Promise. He took her bag, noting how light it was. Everything she owned in the world still fit in one small duffel. That would change, he vowed silently. As they turned to leave, Director Hargrove approached. Max tensed instinctively, but her usual coldness had softened slightly. Lily, she said, I wish you well in your new home. Lily nodded politely. Thank you, Director. The woman turned to Max, her professional mask firmly in place. Mr. Foster, the court may have granted you guardianship, but our department will still be conducting regular check-ins. I hope you understand this is for Lily's benefit, not because we doubt the judge's decision. Max recognized the olive branch for what it was. Of course, we'll welcome the visits. Something almost like approval flickered in the director's eyes. You surprised me, Mr. Foster. Not many would have fought so hard or sacrificed so much. I hope for Lily's sake that your commitment remains as strong in the years ahead. It will, Max replied with certainty. The director nodded, then handed him a folder. Lily's medical records, school transcripts and psychological assessments. She's behind academically due to the disruptions, but her intelligence is evident. With proper support, she should catch up quickly. Max accepted the folder, struck by the strange détente between them. Thank you. Director Hargrove looked down at Lily one last time. Remember what we discussed about expressing your needs clearly, Lily. A family can't support you if they don't know what you require. I remember, Lily replied. With that, the director returned to the building, her rigid posture relaxing just slightly as she watched them go. A professional who had fought for her vision of what was best, but could recognize when it was time to support a different outcome. The drive home was filled with Lily's excited chatter about returning to our house and seeing Mrs. Reynolds and Thomas again. The trauma of separation hadn't been erased, but children's resilience remained a marvel to Max. Given security and love, they could bounce back from extraordinary hardship. I have a surprise for you, Max told her as they neared the mansion. What kind of surprise? Lily asked, immediately suspicious in the way of children who have learned that surprises aren't always positive. A good one, you'll see. As they pulled through the gates, Lily gasped. The front of the house was decorated with a handmade banner reading, Welcome Home Lily, in rainbow letters. Mrs. Reynolds stood on the steps, beaming, with Thomas beside her holding a small cake. They missed you too, Max said softly, watching Lily's expression transform with wonder. They did this for me. Of course they did. You matter to all of us. Lily unbuckled her seatbelt the moment the car stopped, flying out to hug Mrs. Reynolds so fiercely the older woman staggered slightly. I missed your cookies, and your stories, and even your rules about picking up my socks. Mrs. Reynolds laughed through tears. Well, those rules still apply, young lady, but perhaps we can postpone sock lectures until tomorrow. The homecoming celebration was simple but joyful. Cake in the kitchen, presents, new books, art supplies and clothes, and a tour to show Lily the minor renovations made in her absence. Her bedroom had been painted a soft blue at her previous request, and a window seat with cushions had been added. the perfect reading nook. "It's even better than I remembered," Lily whispered, running her hand along the new bookshelves Max had installed himself, surprising everyone with his novice carpentry skills. The day passed in a blur of small joys, Lily reacquainting herself with every corner of the house, exclaiming over plants that had grown, telling Mrs. Reynolds and Thomas elaborate stories about her time away, carefully omitting the darkest moments. Max watched it all with a profound sense of rightness. This was what the house had been missing all along. This energy, this life. That evening, after Lily had fallen asleep in her own bed for the first time in months, Max sat in his office reviewing the folder Director Hargrove had given him. The academic assessments confirmed what he already knew. Lily was bright, but had significant gaps in her education due to frequent moves and absences. The psychological reports were more concerning, noting symptoms of abandonment anxiety, hypervigilance and trust issues, all perfectly understandable given her history, but challenges they would need to address. A soft knock interrupted his reading. Mrs. Reynolds stood in the doorway with a cup of tea. "Thought you might need this," she said, setting it on his desk. "It's been quite a day." "Thank you." Max leaned back, rubbing his eyes. "I'm just trying to get a handle on what she needs academically, emotionally, everything really." Mrs. Reynolds settled into the chair across from him. "If I may, sir, you're overthinking it. Children need consistency, boundaries, and love. The details sort themselves out if those foundations are solid." Max smiled ruefully. "When did you become such an expert on child rearing, Mrs. Reynolds? I thought you didn't have children." "I don't. But I was a child once, as were you." She regarded him with the frank assessment she'd earned through years of service. "And if I may be so bold, you're doing just fine so far." "Am I? I feel completely out of my depth most of the time." "That's parenting," Mrs. Reynolds said with a surprising chuckle. "No one knows what they're doing. Even people with biological children are just making it up as they go along, trust me." This perspective was oddly comforting. Max had approached parenthood as he did business. Researching, planning, strategizing. The idea that some improvisation was not just acceptable but normal eased a pressure he hadn't realized he was carrying. "There is one other matter," Mrs. Reynolds said, her tone shifting slightly. "That call you asked me to make to your brother, I found him." Max went very still. "Where?" "Minneapolis. He owns a small construction company there. Married, 3 children." The information landed like a physical weight. James, his younger brother. They hadn't spoken in almost 25 years, not since their paths had diverged so dramatically. Max to college on scholarship, James to the streets and eventually prison for a non-violent offense. By the time James had been released, Max had been building his first company. Too ashamed of his humble origins to reconnect with the brother who embodied the past he was trying to escape. "Did you tell him about me?" "About Lily?" "No, sir. I simply confirmed his location as you requested. What happens next is entirely your decision." Max nodded, grateful for her discretion. "Thank you, Mrs. Reynolds. That will be all for tonight." After she left, he sat in the quiet of his office, contemplating choices and consequences. During one of their visits at Oakwood, Lily had asked if he had any family. The question had caught him off guard. "Not really," he'd answered, the lie bitter on his tongue. "Not anymore." Lily had studied him with those perceptive eyes. "That's sad. Everyone should have someone. If I deserve a family, you do too." The simple wisdom had haunted him for weeks, eventually prompting him to ask Mrs. Reynolds to locate James. But now that she had, fear gripped him. What would his brother think of the man he'd become? Would he see a successful businessman who'd left his past behind, or a coward who'd abandoned his only family? More importantly, what example was he setting for Lily if he preached the importance of family while denying his own? Max's thoughts were interrupted by a small sound from the hallway. He looked up to find Lily standing in the doorway in her pajamas, looking uncertain. "Can't sleep?" he asked gently. She shook her head. "The bed feels too big after there." Max understood immediately. After months in an institutional setting with minimal privacy but constant background noise, the silence and space of her own room might feel overwhelming rather than comforting. "Want some company for a while?" She nodded, relief evident in her posture. Max patted the sofa against the wall of his office. "Come sit. I have some work to finish, but I can do it while you get sleepy again." Lily curled up on the sofa, wrapped in the throw blanket kept there for Max's occasional late nights. "What are you working on?" she asked through a yawn. "Just reading some reports," he answered vaguely, closing the folder with her psychological assessment. "About me?" Max hesitated, then nodded. "Yes, about school and things like that. Am I in trouble for being behind?" The worry in her voice was palpable. "No, of course not. None of that is your fault." Max moved to sit beside her on the sofa. "But I want to make sure you have everything you need to catch up and thrive." She leaned against his side, a gesture of trust that still surprised him. "Ms. Winters was a good teacher. Can she still help me?" "Absolutely. We'll set up a regular schedule with her until you're ready for regular school in the fall." "Regular school," Lily murmured, sounding both excited and apprehensive, "with other kids and everything." "Only when you're ready," Max assured her. "There's no rush." They sat in comfortable silence for a few minutes, Lily gradually relaxing against him, her breathing slowing towards sleep. "Max," she asked drowsily, "Are you sure you still want me, even with all the trouble?" The question pierced him. "Lily, look at me." He waited until her sleepy eyes met his. "You are not trouble. The situation was complicated, yes, but that was never your fault. And yes, I am absolutely sure I want you here. In fact," he hesitated, then decided to take the leap. "I've been thinking about something even more permanent than guardianship, if you might be interested." She blinked, suddenly more alert. "Like what?" "Like adoption." The word hung between them, momentous and transformative. "It would mean you'd legally be my daughter, forever. No more check-ins from social services eventually. No more questions about arrangements. Just us, a family, officially." Lily's eyes widened. "You'd want that? For real?" "Very much, but only if you would want it too. It's a big decision and you don't have to answer now. Just something to think about." She was quiet for so long that Max worried he'd overwhelmed her. Then, in a small voice, "Could I call you Dad, if that happened?" A lump formed in Max's throat. "You could call me Dad now if you wanted to. You don't need papers for that." Lily considered this with her characteristic seriousness. "Not yet, but maybe soon, when it feels right." "Whenever you're ready," Max agreed, marveling at this child's emotional wisdom. "No pressure." She nodded, settling back against him. "I think I'd like to be adopted, though, to really belong somewhere." "You already belong here," Max said softly. "The papers would just make it official for everyone else." Lily yawned again, her eyes drifting closed. "Will you tell me a story? Grandma always told me stories when I couldn't sleep." Max froze momentarily. He didn't know children's stories. His own childhood had contained few such comforts, and his adult life had been devoid of fairy tales and bedtime rituals. "I'm not very good at stories," he admitted. "That's okay, make one up. It doesn't have to be good." Put that way, how could he refuse? Max thought for a moment, then began hesitantly. Once there was a man who lived in a big empty house. He thought he had everything he needed because he had money and success. But really, his life was missing the most important thing. What was it missing? Lily prompted when he paused. "Love." Max continued softly. His life was missing love. Then one rainy night, a brave little girl appeared at his door and everything changed. By the time he finished the simple story, their story really, with a few embellishments, Lily was fast asleep against him, her face peaceful in a way it rarely was while awake. Max sat there for a long while, unwilling to disturb her rest, marveling at the strange and wonderful turn his life had taken. Eventually, he carefully lifted her and carried her back to her bedroom. As he tucked her in, she stirred slightly. "Good night, Max," she murmured, not fully awake. "Good night, Lily," he whispered. "Welcome home." The next morning brought the first test of their new reality. Max had scheduled a video conference with the Foster Enterprises board, his first full board meeting since stepping back from day-to-day operations. The timing was unfortunate, conflicting with Lily's first session back with Ms. Winters, but unavoidable given the company's current challenges. "I have to take this meeting," he explained to Lily over breakfast. "But Mrs. Reynolds will be here and Ms. Winters is coming at 10. I should be done by lunchtime and then maybe we can go to that bookstore you like." Lily nodded, but he noted a flicker of anxiety in her eyes. "You're not leaving the house, right? Just going to your office?" "Just to my office," Max confirmed. understanding the fear behind her question. After months of separation, the idea of him disappearing again, even briefly, triggered her abandonment anxiety. "You can come knock if you need me, but it's important that I'm not interrupted unless it's an emergency. Can you handle that?" She straightened, clearly wanting to prove herself mature. "I can handle it, I know you can," Max smiled, ruffling her hair affectionately. The board meeting began predictably tense. Several members voiced concerns about the company's direction, the stalled mergers, the declining stock value. Howard Mitchell was particularly vocal. "The question remains, Max. When will you resume full leadership? This temporary arrangement has already lasted longer than anticipated, and the market is responding accordingly." Max was formulating his response when a commotion outside his office door caught everyone's attention. Through the video feed, the board members watched as Max turned toward the noise. "Sir," came Mrs. Reynolds' apologetic voice. "I'm sorry to interrupt, but..." The door burst open and Lily appeared, face flushed with excitement, holding a paper. "Max, Ms. Winters gave me a test and said I'm not as behind as everyone thought. She says with some extra help, I can start 5th grade in the fall and..." She stopped abruptly, noticing the screen full of faces staring at her. "Lily?" Max began, torn between pride in her news and awareness of the professional breach. "I'm in a meeting right now. Remember our discussion about emergencies?" Her face fell. "Oh, I'm sorry. I was excited." Before Max could respond, Howard's voice came through the speakers. "So this is the famous Lily we've been hearing about." Max tensed, expecting criticism, but to his surprise, Howard's tone held only curiosity. "Yes," Max confirmed, placing a gentle hand on Lily's shoulder. "Everyone, this is Lily. Lily, these are the members of my company's board of directors." Lily, recovering quickly, straightened her posture and gave a small wave. "Hello, I'm sorry for interrupting your important meeting." Several board members smiled. Howard leaned forward, studying the child with new interest. "Not at all. In fact, I think you've just answered the question I was asking your guardian." "What question?" Lily asked innocently. Howard chuckled. "I was asking when Max would return to his former schedule, but I believe I understand now why that might not be possible or desirable." Max felt a curious shift in the virtual room, the tension easing, the rigid corporate masks softening as board members saw not an abstract situation that had distracted their CEO, but a real child with a gap-toothed smile and excited news about school progress. "Perhaps," said Janet Chen, the usually stern CFO, "we should be discussing more flexible leadership models rather than expecting a return to past patterns. Many executives successfully balance family responsibilities with corporate leadership." "Precisely what I've been suggesting," Eleanor Wade added smoothly. As the conversation shifted toward constructive solutions rather than criticism, Max felt Lily start to withdraw, aware she was still intruding. He gave her shoulder a reassuring squeeze. "Why don't you go tell Mrs. Reynolds your good news? I'll be done soon, and we can celebrate properly." She nodded, clearly relieved to escape the spotlight, but at the door she paused. "It's nice to meet you all. Max is really good at being She caught herself. "At taking care of me. But he's still good at business too. He works in his office every night after I go to bed. I've seen the light on." With that simple testimony, she slipped out, unaware of the impact her words had made. The board members exchanged glances, reassessing their assumptions about their CEO's commitment. "Quite a remarkable child," Howard observed after a moment. "Articulate, observant." "Yes, she is," Max agreed, a note of unmistakable pride in his voice. "Well," Howard continued, his tone softening further, "perhaps we've been approaching this all wrong. Instead of demanding you choose between your company and your family responsibilities, we should be exploring how Foster Enterprises can evolve to accommodate both." The rest of the meeting proceeded with a markedly different tone, still focused on business challenges, but with a new understanding of the human element involved. By the end, a framework for a more sustainable leadership model had emerged, one that would allow Max to remain at the helm while delegating more operational control to his executive team. As the meeting concluded, Howard asked to speak with Max privately. The others signed off, leaving just the two men on the call. "She calls you Max, not Dad?" Howard asked without preamble. "For now," Max replied. "We're taking things one step at a time." Howard nodded thoughtfully. "My father was never around when I was growing up, always at the office, building his legacy. I swore I'd be different with my own children, but then I found myself doing exactly the same thing." He sighed heavily. "My son hasn't spoken to me in 3 years. My daughter sends obligatory holiday cards. The legacy I fought so hard to build means nothing to them." Max was startled by this personal revelation from a man who'd always been the epitome of buttoned-up professionalism. "What I'm trying to say," Howard continued, "is that perhaps you're wiser than I was. Don't make my mistakes, Max. The company will survive with a few hours less of your time each day. What that child needs, what you're giving her, can't be delegated or postponed." With that unexpected blessing, Howard ended the call, leaving Max to contemplate this new alliance from an unexpected quarter. The morning had brought surprises indeed. Lily's academic progress, the board's shift in perspective, Howard's personal revelation. But the greatest revelation was within Max himself. For the first time, the competing demands of his professional and personal lives didn't feel like an either-or proposition. Perhaps with the right boundaries and support, he could honor both, could be both the business leader he'd spent decades becoming and the father Lily needed him to be. It wouldn't be easy. There would be conflicts and compromises, difficult decisions and inevitable mistakes. But as he left his office to find Lily and celebrate her good news, Max felt a certainty that had eluded him for months. They would find their way through together, one day at a time. 1 year later, the summer sun filtered through the trees, casting dappled shadows across the backyard of the Foster mansion. What had once been a pristine, rarely used landscape of manicured lawns and ornamental gardens had undergone a transformation as significant as the house itself. A treehouse, professionally designed but bearing the unmistakable creative input of a child, stood in the old oak. A vegetable garden flourished along the south wall, Mrs. Reynolds' project with Lily. A basketball hoop had been installed beside the winding driveway, and evidence of actual use could be seen in the scuff marks below it. Max stood on the terrace, watching as Lily raced through the sprinkler system, her laughter carrying across the yard. At 11, almost 12, as she frequently reminded everyone, she still found joy in simple pleasures like running through water on a hot day. The change in her over the past year had been remarkable. The watchful wariness had largely faded from her eyes. She no longer hoarded food or flinched at sudden movements. Her academic progress had exceeded everyone's expectations, allowing her to enter 5th grade on schedule the previous fall. "Lemonade, sir?" Mrs. Reynolds appeared at his side, offering a tray with 2 glasses. "Thank you." Max took a glass, gesturing for her to join him if she wished. Their relationship had evolved over the past year, the formality softening as they became co-conspirators in the project of raising Lily. "The guests should be arriving soon," she reminded him. "Should I call her in to change?" Max checked his watch. "Give her a few more minutes. It's not every day we celebrate an adoption becoming final." The word still felt miraculous on his tongue. After months of additional home studies, interviews, legal proceedings and paperwork, the final adoption decree had been signed the previous week. Lily was now legally and irrevocably Lily Carter Foster, his daughter in the eyes of the law as well as in his heart. Today's gathering was a celebration of that milestone, a small party with the people who had become their extended family. Eleanor Wade, who had fought so tenaciously for their legal case, Miss B.C. Winters, the tutor who had helped Lily catch up academically and had become a trusted mentor, Thomas and his wife, a few of Lily's new friends from school and their parents, even Howard Mitchell and his wife, whose support had proven unexpectedly valuable. There was one additional guest, however, who made Max's stomach twist with nervous anticipation. After months of hesitation, false starts and encouragement from Lily, he had finally reached out to his brother. The initial contact had been awkward. A brief email explaining who he was and why he was reaching out after so many years. James's response had been cautious, but not unwelcoming. Several phone calls had followed, each progressively less strained, as the brothers began the delicate work of rebuilding a relationship long thought dead. Today would be their first face-to-face meeting in nearly 25 years. James and his family were driving in from Minneapolis, especially for the occasion, a gesture that both honored Max and terrified him. What would his brother think of the life he'd built? Would he see only the wealth and privilege, Or would he understand the deeper changes that had occurred? "Dad, watch this!" Lily called, pulling Max from his thoughts as she performed an elaborate cartwheel through the sprinkler. Her hair, longer now and streaked with summer highlights, flew out in a golden arc as she spun. "Impressive," he called back, smiling at the casual use of Dad, a title she had begun using a few months earlier, initially tentatively, but now with comfortable frequency. The first time she'd said it had been ordinary, yet extraordinary, passing him the salt at dinner with a simple, "Can you reach that, Dad?" The word had hung in the air between them, new and powerful, until Max had managed to respond normally while his heart performed acrobatics in his chest. The doorbell rang, signaling the arrival of the first guests. Mrs. Reynolds went to answer it while Max called to Lily. "Time to get ready, sweetheart. People are starting to arrive." She nodded, giving the sprinkler one last run-through before jogging toward the house, leaving wet footprints across the terrace. "Is Uncle James here yet?" she asked, accepting the towel Max held out. "Not yet. They should be here soon." Max still marveled at how easily Lily had embraced the concept of an uncle she'd never met, immediately assigning him the familiar title and peppering Max with questions about what James was like, what his children, her cousins, enjoyed doing, whether they might like her. "I'm nervous," she admitted, toweling her hair. "What if they don't like me?" "Impossible," Max assured her, touched by her vulnerability. "They're going to love you. How could they not?" She shrugged, suddenly looking very young despite her approaching adolescence. "Sometimes people just don't like other people. Jenny Miller at school doesn't like me, even though I never did anything to her." "Well, Jenny Miller is clearly missing out on knowing an amazing person," Max replied, guiding Lily toward the door. "But I promise, your cousins are going to think you're the coolest person they've ever met. Now go change before you catch a chill." "It's 90 degrees out, Dad," she pointed out with preteen exasperation. "I'm not going to catch a chill." "Humor me," Max said, giving her a gentle nudge toward the stairs. "And wear that new dress if you want to. The blue one." Lily rolled her eyes but headed upstairs with a bounce in her step that suggested the dress had already been her plan. By the time she returned, wearing the blue dress, her damp hair neatly braided, several guests had arrived. Eleanor Wade was deep in conversation with Howard Mitchell near the buffet. Ms. Winters was admiring the new family photographs that lined the hallway, professional portraits taken to commemorate the adoption, showing Max and Lily in coordinating outfits, their resemblance not of blood, but of expression, of shared joy. "You look beautiful," Max told Lily as she joined him, accepting the compliment with only mild embarrassment. "When are they coming?" she whispered, scanning the growing crowd. "Any minute," Max assured her, checking his watch again. His brother had texted from the road an hour earlier, reporting good progress on their drive. As if summoned by their conversation, Mrs. Reynolds appeared at Max's elbow. "Sir, they're here." Max felt his heartbeat accelerate. "Show them in, please." Lily slipped her hand into his. Whether offering or seeking reassurance, he wasn't sure, but he squeezed it gratefully. The moment of James's entrance seemed to unfold in slow motion. He was taller than Max remembered, his hair grayed at the temples, his face weathered but handsome. Beside him stood his wife, Andrea, a warm-looking woman with kind eyes, and behind them, 3 children ranging from approximately 8 to 15 years old, all bearing the unmistakable foster features, the strong jawline, the expressive eyebrows, the cleft chin that Max and James had inherited from their father. For a suspended moment, the brothers simply looked at each other across the room, 2 men shaped by the same difficult beginning, but separated by decades of different choices and circumstances. Then James smiled, the same crooked smile Max remembered from childhood, and stepped forward, hand extended. "Max," he said simply. Max took the offered hand, then, following an impulse he couldn't explain, pulled his brother into a brief but firm embrace. "James, thank you for coming." When they separated, both men's eyes shone with emotion neither would acknowledge directly. James cleared his throat. "This is my wife, Andrea, and our children, Ryan, Michael, and Sophia." Max greeted them warmly, hyper-aware of Lily still standing slightly behind him. "And this," he said, gently drawing her forward, "is my daughter, Lily." The word daughter still carried a thrill every time he said it. Lily stepped forward, suddenly shy but determined to make a good impression. "Hi," she said, extending her hand just as Max had taught her. It's nice to meet you. Dad has told me a lot about you. James looked momentarily startled at hearing Max called Dad, but recovered quickly, shaking Lily's hand with appropriate seriousness. It's wonderful to meet you too, Lily. Your father and I have a lot of catching up to do, but I'm glad we're starting with such a happy occasion. Andrea moved forward then, her warmth dispelling any lingering awkwardness. Lily, your cousins have been so excited to meet you. Sophia brought some friendship bracelets she thought you might like to make together. The teenage girl nodded, holding up a small bag. If you want to, she added, clearly uncertain whether an almost 12-year-old would consider such an activity too childish. Lily's face lit up. I love friendship bracelets. I have some upstairs too. I could show you my collection, and just like that, the ice was broken. The children drifted off together, Lily leading her newfound cousins upstairs to see her room, their voices blending in the easy camaraderie of youth. They'll be fine, Andrea assured Max, noting his glance toward the stairs. Kids are remarkably adaptable, more so than adults sometimes, James added with a pointed look at his brother. Max nodded, acknowledging the truth in this. I'm glad you came, James. It means a lot to both of us. Well, when my estranged billionaire brother suddenly reappears with a daughter and an invitation, curiosity alone would have brought me, James replied, with a hint of the dry humor Max remembered. But seriously, Max, I'm happy for you. She seems like a remarkable kid. She is, Max agreed, relaxing slightly as the initial tension ebbed. She's changed everything. Children have a way of doing that, Andrea observed with a knowing smile. Now why don't you introduce us to your other guests? I'd love to hear how you two found each other. As the party progressed, Max watched with growing wonder as the various parts of his life, so long kept separate and compartmentalized, began to blend and integrate. Eleanor, Wade, and James found common ground discussing legal issues facing small businesses. Howard Mitchell engaged Andrea in conversation about education policy, a passion of hers as a high school counselor. Mrs. Reynolds fussed over all three of James's children as if they were her own grandchildren, and Lily moved seamlessly between groups, the undisputed center of the celebration, her confidence growing with each successful interaction. During a quiet moment, Max found himself alone with James on the terrace, both men nursing drinks as they watched the children playing an impromptu game of tag in the yard below. You've done well for yourself, James commented, gesturing toward the expansive grounds. I always knew you would. Max detected no bitterness in the observation, only a matter-of-fact acknowledgement. I got lucky in a lot of ways. Luck and brains and determination, James corrected. Don't sell yourself short, little brother. The familiar nickname, unused for decades, caused a lump to form in Max's throat. I should have reached out sooner, he said quietly. After you got out, after you got back on your feet. There's no excuse for how long I stayed away. James was silent for a moment, considering the amber liquid in his glass. I used to be angry about that, he admitted finally. Felt like you'd left me behind, like I was some embarrassing reminder of where you came from. That's not, Max began, but James held up a hand. Let me finish. I was angry for a long time, but then I got sober, got married, had kids of my own, started building something I could be proud of, and somewhere along the way I realized that holding on to that anger was only hurting me. You made your choices, I made mine. We both survived. More than survived, Max observed, glancing at the children below. Exactly. James turned to face him directly. So when you reached out, I figured, why not? Life's too short to cling to old grievances, and seeing you now with Lily, you're not the same man who walked away all those years ago. No, Max agreed softly, I'm not. Fatherhood has a way of rearranging your priorities, James said with a knowing smile. Ask me how I know. They shared a chuckle of mutual understanding, the tension between them dissolving further with each passing moment. She told me, you know, Max said after a comfortable silence. Lily, she's the one who convinced me to find you. James raised an eyebrow. Oh? She said, if I deserve a family, you do too. Max shook his head, still amazed by the child's insight. Out of the mouths of babes, right? Smart kid you've got there. I can't take credit for that part, Max admitted. She came that way, wise beyond her years from everything she's been through. Below them, Lily had organized all the children, including her cousins and her school friends, into some complex game involving the sprinkler and what appeared to be an elaborate set of rules she was explaining with animated gestures. Natural leader too, James observed. Like her dad. The casual comparison, the acknowledgement of Max's parental role as real and legitimate, meant more than Max could express. He simply nodded, emotion threatening to overwhelm his carefully maintained composure. Sensing his brother's feelings, James changed the subject slightly. Andrea and I were talking. We'd love to have you both visit us in Minneapolis sometime. The kids could get to know each other better. Nothing fancy like this, he added with a grin, but we make a mean barbecue. We'd like that, Max replied, genuinely pleased by the invitation. Lily's never been to Minnesota. She's been asking to travel more, see new places. It's settled then, this fall maybe. The foliage is beautiful in October. October sounds perfect. Their conversation was interrupted by Mrs. Reynolds announcing that the cake was ready. The children raced inside, Lily leading the pack, her face flushed with exertion and happiness. The cake was a masterpiece of confectionery art. 3 tiers of blue fondant decorated with sugar flowers, and the words, "Officially a Foster," in elegant script. Lily gasped when she saw it, throwing her arms around Mrs. Reynolds in spontaneous gratitude. "It's perfect," she exclaimed. "Can I cut it, please?" "With help," Max stipulated, stepping forward to assist with the large cake knife. As everyone gathered around, Howard Mitchell unexpectedly cleared his throat. "If I might say a few words first?" Max nodded, curious about what his old mentor might want to express. Howard raised his glass. "To Max and Lily Foster," he began formally. "When I first heard about this situation a year ago, I'll admit I was skeptical. I thought Max was throwing away everything he'd worked for on some impulsive charitable gesture." A ripple of nervous laughter moved through the guests who knew the history of Max's battle to become Lily's guardian. "I've rarely been so happy to be proven wrong," Howard continued, his voice softening. "What I've witnessed over this past year has been nothing short of remarkable. Not just a child finding a home, but a man finding his purpose. Foster Enterprises hasn't suffered. In fact, our new leadership model has made the company more resilient. And our fearless leader has discovered there's more to life than quarterly earnings." He raised his glass higher. "So here's to the newest official member of the Foster family. Lily, you've already changed one life immeasurably for the better. I suspect you'll go on to change many more." "Hear, hear," Eleanor called, raising her own glass. Lily beamed, clearly delighted by the impromptu speech. Max placed a hand on her shoulder, overwhelmed by the journey that had brought them to this moment. "Speech," someone called. "Dad's turn for a speech." Max shook his head ruefully. He could address boardrooms and shareholder meetings without breaking a sweat, but speaking about something this personal, this meaningful, was entirely different. "I'm not sure I can put into words what today means," he began carefully. "A year and a half ago, my life was complete on paper. Successful, enviable even, but hollow in ways I didn't fully recognize." He looked down at Lily, who gazed back with absolute trust and affection. "Then this extraordinary young lady showed up at my gate one stormy night, and nothing has been the same since. She taught me that true wealth isn't measured in bank accounts or business holdings. It's measured in moments of connection, in laughter shared over burned pancakes, in the privilege of watching someone grow and thrive." Max felt his voice growing rough with emotion, but continued. "Someone once asked me what I wanted from Lily, suggesting that no one does something for nothing. The truth is, she's given me far more than I could ever give her. A reason to come home at night, a reason to build a future beyond the next business deal, a reason to reconnect with family I'd left behind." He nodded toward James, who raised his glass in acknowledgement. "So while today makes official what we've known in our hearts for some time, that we are father and daughter in every way that matters, it's really a celebration of something larger. It's about the families we're born into, and the families we choose. It's about second chances and new beginnings." Max placed the cake knife in Lily's hand, covering it with his own. "Lily Carter Foster, you have made me the proudest father on earth. Here's to making it official, and to all the adventures that lie ahead." As applause filled the room, Lily looked up at him with shining eyes. "That was a good speech, Dad," she whispered, "even if it was a little mushy." Max laughed, the joy bubbling up unstoppably. "Sorry about that. Now let's cut this cake before I get even mushier." Together they pressed the knife into the top tier, symbolically marking the beginning of their official life as a legal family. As pieces were distributed and conversation resumed, Max found himself observing the scene with a sense of wonder. His home, once a showcase of wealth but little warmth, now overflowed with laughter, conversation, and genuine connection. In one corner, James and Andrea chatted comfortably with Eleanor and Ms. Winters. Near the windows, Thomas's wife was showing Mrs. Reynolds photos on her phone, both women smiling over some shared joke. The children had migrated to the floor, eating cake with more enthusiasm than elegance. Lily at the center of the group, her face animated as she told some story that had her cousins and friends giggling. Howard appeared at Max's side, plate in hand. "Quite a change from the corporate gatherings you used to host," he observed, following Max's gaze around the room. "For the better, I think," Max replied. "Undoubtedly." Howard sampled the cake appreciatively. "You know, I've been thinking about what you said in that board meeting last year, about redefining stability. You were right. The metrics that truly matter aren't the ones we track in quarterly reports." Max nodded, surprised by this philosophical turn from his usually pragmatic mentor. "Took me decades to figure that out." "Better late than never," Howard said, clapping him on the shoulder before moving off to join another conversation. As the afternoon progressed, Max found himself drawn into various groups, discussing everything from business strategies with Howard to fishing spots in Minnesota with James, to Lily's academic progress with Ms. Winters. It struck him that for the first time in his adult life, he wasn't compartmentalizing. Work separate from personal, past separate from present. The walls he'd built between different aspects of his life were dissolving, allowing a more integrated, authentic existence. Eventually, as the party began to wind down, Max found himself back on the terrace with Lily beside him, both of them watching the sunset paint the Chicago skyline in shades of gold and rose. "Was it everything you hoped for?" he asked, noting her thoughtful expression. She considered the question with characteristic seriousness. "It was better. I didn't know I had so many people who cared about me, about us." "That's what family does," Max said softly. "It grows beyond what you initially imagine." Lily leaned against him, comfortable in their shared moment. "Dad? Remember that first night when I asked to sleep in your doghouse?" Max chuckled. "How could I forget? I told you I didn't have a dog." "I'm glad you didn't." She looked up at him, her expression suddenly earnest. "Because then you might have just let me stay in the doghouse instead of inviting me inside, and everything would be different." The simplicity and truth of this observation struck Max forcibly. How easily their paths might not have crossed. How many small decisions and circumstances had aligned to bring them to this moment. "I think," he said carefully, "that some things are meant to be. Some connections are just waiting to be discovered." Lily nodded, satisfied with this explanation. "Like you and Uncle James, too. That was waiting to happen." "Yes," Max agreed, glancing through the window to where his brother was helping Andrea gather their children's belongings, preparing for the drive to their hotel. "Some relationships just need the right time and circumstances. And courage," Lily added pointedly. "You needed courage to call him." "I had help with that part," Max reminded her, squeezing her shoulders gently. "A very wise, almost 12-year-old gave me a push in the right direction." Lily grinned, pleased with this acknowledgement of her role. "We helped each other, I think. That's what families do." "That's exactly what families do," Max confirmed, marveling again at this child's insight. Inside, Mrs. Reynolds was efficiently directing the cleanup process while the last guests said their goodbyes. James caught Max's eye through the window and gestured that they were leaving. "We should go say goodbye to your cousins," Max suggested, "and confirm our visit for October." As they turned to go inside, Lily paused, looking back at the sunset one last time. "You know what Grandma used to say? That the most beautiful things often come after storms." "Your grandmother sounds like she was very wise," Max said. Lily nodded solemnly. "She was. She would have liked you, I think. And she would be happy about today." "I hope so," Max replied, throat tightening at the thought of the grandmother he'd never meet, who had instilled such resilience and wisdom in her granddaughter. "I know so," Lily stated with absolute certainty. Then, taking his hand, she led him back inside to bid farewell to their newly expanded family. Later that night, after James and his family had left with promises of October visits, after the last guest had departed and Mrs. Reynolds had retired to her quarters, Max sat in his office reviewing photographs from the day. Eleanor had arranged for a professional photographer to document the celebration, and the digital files had already been delivered. The images told a story more eloquent than words. Lily cutting the cake, her face alight with joy. Max and James, side by side after decades apart, the family resemblance unmistakable. Lily with her cousins, heads bent together over friendship bracelets, the entire extended group. An unlikely collection of people brought together by the bond between a man and the child who had changed his life. The last photo captured a moment Max hadn't even been aware was documented. Himself and Lily on the terrace at sunset, silhouetted against the golden sky, her head resting against his side, his arm around her shoulders. Not posed, not performative, just a genuine moment of connection between father and daughter. Max saved this image as his new computer background, then closed his laptop. The house was quiet now, settling into the comfortable rhythms of their shared life. He made his usual rounds, checking locks, turning off lights, all the mundane security measures that had once seemed like mere property protection, but now represented something far more precious, safeguarding a home, not just a house. He paused at Lily's doorway. She was already asleep, curled on her side, one arm around the stuffed bear he'd given her that first painful separation, a bear that had once represented promise and now symbolized a promise kept. "Good night, Lily," he whispered, though she couldn't hear him. "Thank you for finding me." As he turned to go, her voice, drowsy but distinct, surprised him. "Good night, Dad. Thank you for seeing me." The simple exchange, so ordinary, so profound, encapsulated everything their journey had been about. Recognition, connection, the transformation of two solitary souls into something greater than themselves, a family. Max closed her door gently and headed to his own room, certain of one thing above all others. Whatever challenges tomorrow might bring, they would face them together. The storm had passed, and what remained was indeed more beautiful than he could have imagined.